This video will contain spoilers from the world and story of Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero. Please beware. Now, I don't think I'm in the minority when I say that, considering everything we've heard about Subnautica Below Zero. I most definitely wasn't expecting a new update up until the big story rework that is supposed to be dropping, hopefully, somewhere this year. So I was that much more surprised when you guys suddenly started messaging me that Subnautica had just released a new update while I was on the holiday, of course, called The Lost Ship. And well, today we will look at the first and perhaps the major part of it, which is the Lost Ship itself. Now, I've looked at this ship in two different videos already, kind of following its development, and well, more stuff had been added as of right now. So we're just gonna have another fresh look at it, see what we can figure out about it from all the information on the wiki, what we can see in the game, and what we can see on Subnautica's Favro board. So without any further ado, cuddle your nearest trivalve fish, get into your sea truck, and let's go. Now, first of all, the ship we will be talking about today has been officially designated as Mercury 2, and we can see this in the game if we simply approach one part of it, as it is written in pretty big letters right there on the hull. Now, the ship on its own had received a pretty big visual rework. I mean, a lot of the original texture, which was incredibly corroded and barnacle-y, for the lack of a better word, had been changed into a bit more of a fresh look, which in my eyes definitely makes the ship look a bit less old and kind of follows the theory better that the Subnautica website is trying to achieve, which is the fact that this ship should be somewhere in the 30 to 100 years old bracket range. And I'm not gonna lie, right now it definitely looks to be leaning much more towards the younger area of that time frame rather than the older one. So what do we know about this ship? Well, number one, it is not the Degassi, and for everyone that keeps saying that it is the Degassi for some reason, I think it just being called Mercury 2 is your final confirmation there. Not only does the ship look completely different, and it doesn't quite match up with the time frame of the Degassi, now it is also called something different, so I think the chances of them actually being the same ship are incredibly low by now. Now, yes, some people have pointed out that previously the PDA logs that could be found on there were actually the ones from the Degassi, but I am almost 100% certain those were simply placeholder. About the exact same way as the nutrient blocks that you can find on there right now still have the description matching to the Aurora. Now, looking at the three pieces of the ship that we can find, they still span three different biomes and their location hasn't really changed, but what has been added is a bit of a paint job that now covers these, mostly consisting of blue, white, and reddish/orangey stripes, which appear slightly different depending on the lighting. But what is definitely curious about them is that, as far as I know, we don't know anything in the world that would really match these colors. They definitely don't appear to be Alteran colors, and it's not like we know a lot of other companies, especially as far as logos go, so whether this is a Mongolian vessel or something completely different, that is currently not in our ability to tell. But there is something else that we can actually see about the ship, and this becomes very apparent once you go inside, and that is the main way that this ship was actually propelled: nuclear power. Now, originally you could have found maybe one or two nuclear reactors on the inside, but now if you scour the insides of the ship, you can find a ton of depleted nuclear rods or active nuclear rods, as well as what appear to be slightly modified, larger, and maybe even older versions of the nuclear reactor that you can build in the first game. Now, this definitely shows us how the ship was propelled, but it also tells us that clearly, in however long it has been in between the crash of this ship and the first game, the technology in that area hasn't advanced that much, considering that the nuclear reactors look exactly the same, and considering the fact that I'm almost certain that you will still be able to use the active nuclear rods in reactors that you'll build in Below Zero. Now, this theory of the ship having a lot to do with nuclear power is further supported by a very small detail I noticed on some of the hanging pieces that are held up by the lily pad plants, and that is that if you zoom in really close, they have a radiation symbol on them and a warning that corresponds with it. Now, in terms of what the ship was designated for, I mean, it is still very hard to tell. If you explore the insides, you can find what appear to be crew quarters that seem to be able to fit quite a few people. I mean, at least a dozen, maybe even more, with additional 2 or 3 rooms designated for presumably the more important members of the crew. But what exactly their mission was or their goal is still kinda hard to guess. I mean, the ship does contain an aquarium, but this one appears to be purely decorative, much more so than used for research purposes. Now, yes, you can make the argument that the ship is a cargo ship, considering the amount of boxes that you can find on board, but to be fair, if you had a ship like this with a crew reasonably large, you would probably need a ton of supplies for any longer voyage, so I don't necessarily think that is a confirming factor. Now luckily, thanks to this update, it finally also became clear what the third piece, the tiniest piece of the ship, is, and it simply appears to be one of the thrusters in the back. This is something I missed in my previous video, so just putting it in here for correction. I don't think anyone doubted even at that point that they're from the same ship, but I just couldn't figure out where in the heck that thing would attach. Now finally, I want to touch upon something that is in the bottom of the ship, and in my last video, I said that there is no hole in the ship that would signify it being hit by the gun from the first game. And let's be honest, with a ship that's crashed on planet 4546b that is in the time frame that this ship is, the chances of it going down thanks to the gun are probably pretty high. Now yes, you could say that the ship is broken in half, literally, but in my eyes that is most likely not something that would have happened from the gun itself, but more likely after impact, especially considering the position of the two pieces relative to each other. But it is a fair argument if you want to say that maybe one of the thrusters was taken off by the laser gun and that caused the ship to crash. Now there is technically one large hole in the ship's bottom, which allows you to access the caves below. However, considering that we've seen the effects of the precursor gun on Sunbeam already, I think this is way too little damage to have actually been impacted by that weapon. And also, if you look at the edges of that hole, they actually bend outwards, not inwards, as they would if they were hit with some force from the bottom, well, presumably. And that is effectively all I was able to gather about the update to this new ship as of right now. Yes, it looks much cooler, and there's clearly more to theorize about. However, I still feel like we're missing big chunks of information to actually be able to put together who the ship belonged to, what its original purpose was, and how it found itself crashed at the bottom of the ocean on planet 4546b. I mean, it definitely makes you think that, considering the fact that we've only really known about a handful of ships that ever crashed on this planet, and the majority of them crashed onto areas with land, which are already sparse on planet 4546b, such as Sector 0 and the crater of the first game, you must wonder if there are actually dozens of other ships that managed to crash on this planet, but simply ended up sinking down into the void never to be heard of again. But that's some food for thought for another video, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little update, and I will talk about the rest of the Lost Ship update in a future video. As a small reminder, if you guys are still interested in playing the original story of Subnautica Below Zero, as it is right now before the big rework hits, this is your last chance. As the post on the Subnautica official website says, the next update coming after this will most definitely be the one changing the story, so if you're still interested in that, go give it a play. But if you enjoyed this video, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated, and if there's anything that I missed, or theories of your own that you would like to cover about this ship, please make sure to leave them down in the comments as well. I would very much like to read them. Now with that, I'm gonna wish you all a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.